Pakistan's campaign of military airstrikes against Afghanistan is causing huge civilian casualties and sufferings to the Afghan people. We reiterate Secretary General's deep concern at civilian casualties caused by airstrikes, cross-border firing, and targeted killings as detailed in UNAMA reports. Dressing up a massacre as a military operation does not absolve the perpetrator. Killing, maiming, and orphaning civilians is not counter-terrorism. Espousing high principles of international law and Islamic solidarity while mercilessly carrying out airstrikes during the holy month of Ramadan is a perfect example of hypocrisy. This is an outcome of an organized factory of hate coming from the deep state of Pakistan, which aims to keep their citizens in a state of permanent hostility with India in order to perpetuate their stay in power and control of national resources. Madam President, I congratulate Colombia for assuming the presidency of the Council, and thank you for giving me the floor. I thank Ms. Georgia Gagnon, Head of Mission and Deputy SRSG Political of UNAMA for briefing this meeting. We also take note of Director Bosornu from OCHA and Ms. Mehran for their briefings. India and Afghanistan are contiguous neighbors, and as civilizational states, our ties have spanned centuries. Our history of close cooperation continues to guide our modern-day relationship. The proud people of Afghanistan have endured a lot in this century, and the Government of India will continue to stand in favor of peace and stability so as to foster development and stability in this nation. Our participation in the Doha Working Group meetings and our strong bilateral development partnerships stand testimony to this promise. Madam President, India's capacity building and humanitarian assistance initiatives for the Afghan people can be seen in all 34 provinces and in more than 500 development partnership projects. We are focusing on healthcare, public infrastructure, and capacity building. We are intensifying our cooperation with UN agencies, as well as others such as Afghanistan Red Cross Society, in priority areas of the Afghan people. The visits to India of Afghan ministers last year have ensured necessary planning and coordination so that our support reaches the intended beneficiaries. Generations of Afghans, having suffered years of active hostility, are now suffering neglect of the international community. In April 2026, India delivered 3 tons of specialized flood relief supplies to support communities affected by recent floods. The consignment included kitchen sets, dignity and hygiene kits, plastic sheets, tarpaulin, sleeping bags, and more. In its commitment to strengthen Afghanistan's child immunization program, India has recently delivered 33 tons of BCG and tetanus and diphtheria vaccines and related dry materials to Kabul. It gives us great satisfaction to report that now Afghan children suffering from acute congenital heart diseases are being treated in India. Establishment of maternity clinics in rural areas in Paktika, Khost, and Paktia, upgradation of the Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, and construction of oncology and trauma centers in Kabul also underlines our commitment to Afghan women and children. We thank our partner agencies, including UNICEF and Afghan Red Cross Society in this regard. Setting up of an oncology center, a trauma center, and the soon-to-begin installation of advanced medical devices across hospitals, and construction of a 30-bed hospital in Kabul and a thalassemia center in Herat will provide much-needed healthcare support. Since August 2021, my country has supplied more than 50,000 tons of wheat, 420 tons of medicines and vaccines, including anti-cancer medicines, and medicines for vector diseases, as well as 40,000 liters of pesticides. The 2 earthquakes that have ravaged Afghanistan last year call for more support. India was among the first to provide humanitarian assistance to the tune of 60 tons of food, 42 tons of earthquake relief materials, and 73 tons of essential medicines. In partnership with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, we have provided 68 tons of medical supplies and 34 tons of social support items for rehabilitation of drug addicts. In the field of education, our scholarship and fellowship schemes for Afghan students are always in demand. Since 2023, about 3,000 students have availed themselves of these opportunities, including 1,000 Afghan women. Another 1,000 scholarships will also be offered very soon to pursue degree courses and master's courses. India continues to provide financial and logistical support to Afghan self-help groups led by women. Madam President, The display of skill and professionalism by Afghan cricketers during the recently concluded Indian Premier League brought immense joy to all of Afghanistan and to the cricketing world. India is pleased to convey that it is hosting the Afghanistan cricket team for a bilateral series. We hope that this will bring further happiness, encouragement, and a sense of celebration to the people of Afghanistan. Sports have a rare power to lift a nation's spirit, to provide shared moments of pride, hope, and joy. We definitely believe that our Afghan brothers and sisters deserve this. India is also the top destination of Afghan exports. As per the World Bank, 43% of Afghanistan's exports are destined for India. By offering tariff-free access for Afghan goods to Indian markets, we have operationalized a dedicated air freight corridor between India and Afghanistan. We are also supporting Afghan traders by issuing hundreds of gratis long-term business visas who are suffering under unprecedented trade and transit terrorism inflicted upon them by Pakistan's denial of passage for trade. The cynical closure of access for this landlocked country is in total violation of UN declarations on landlocked developing countries and a clear weaponization of their trade and transit vulnerabilities. This blatant Pakistani violation of WTO norms and of the UN Charter and international law should be condemned by the global community. Madam President, the Secretary General's report had noted the dire humanitarian concerns and the rising implications for Afghanistan due to unprecedented scale and pace of forced and involuntary returns under adverse circumstances. This needs the world's attention and necessitates more efforts towards addressing food security, healthcare, water security, and other shelter challenges. The returnees need to be provided housing, basic services, and livelihoods. The Afghan economy is suffering from the additional burden of returnees. To this end, my country is working with UN agencies and of the Afghan authorities to make provisions for housing, food, and other essential items to ease the immense pain that has been inflicted on the Afghan people and support their reintegration. We also reiterate the Secretary General's call on member states to uphold their international obligations in relation to protection and ensure that returns are voluntary, safe, dignified, and accompanied by sustained support for reintegration of returnees into communities. India would like to emphasize the importance of UNAMA and its mandate and underline our full support to UNAMA in these challenging times as it endeavors to promote peace and stability in Afghanistan. Pakistan, in its statement earlier today, questioned the intent of UNAMA and the veracity of UNSG's report. We would like to stress that support for multilateralism and the United Nations is not an a la carte menu. Pakistan's campaign of military airstrikes against Afghanistan is causing huge civilian casualties and sufferings to the Afghan people. We reiterate Secretary General's deep concern at civilian casualties caused by airstrikes, cross-border firing, and targeted killings as detailed in UNAMA reports. We support the Secretary General's call urging compliance with obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, and ensuring protection of civilians. We also support UNAMA's earlier calls for investigation to ensure accountability, prevent recurrence, and uphold victims' rights. Such unconscionable acts of violence are a blatant assault on Afghanistan's sovereignty and a threat to the region's peace and stability. India strongly condemns the airstrikes on Afghan territory, which are flagrant violations of international law and the UN Charter and the principle of state sovereignty. According to UNAMA, 372 civilians have been killed and 397 injured just in the first 3 months of this year. A large majority of them during the holy month of Ramadan, a time of peace, mercy, and reflection, which makes the act all the more reprehensible. We reiterate UNAMA's call for compliance with obligations under international humanitarian law, including the principles of precaution, distinction, and proportionality to protect civilians from harm. No faith, no law, and no morality can justify these actions. Let me reiterate, dressing up a massacre as a military operation does not absolve the perpetrator. Killing, maiming, and orphaning civilians is not counter-terrorism. Espousing high principles of international law and Islamic solidarity while mercilessly carrying out airstrikes during the holy month of Ramadan is a perfect example of hypocrisy. Blaming neighbors for its own failures is an old Pakistani habit. This attempt to hoodwink the world will fail. Coming up with official notifications directing Pakistan's government agencies to start referring to groups inside its own borders as Fitna al-Hindustan is nothing but officially sponsored misinformation and disinformation dressed in religious terminology. This is an outcome of an organized factory of hate coming from the deep state of Pakistan, which aims to keep their citizens in a state of permanent hostility with India in order to perpetuate their stay in power and control of national resources and detract them from core political and economic problems. The de facto coup by the military through the 27th Constitutional Amendment is only its most recent manifestation. India stands steadfast in rejecting terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Only coordinated efforts of the international community can ensure that ISIL and Al-Qaeda and their affiliates, including the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and proxies of the LET such as the Resistant Front, along with those who facilitate their operations, no longer indulge in cross-border terrorism. We call on the international community to work together towards this noble goal. Madam President, we lend our voice again in re-emphasizing the importance of incentivizing positive actions. The political reality of Afghanistan has changed in the last 5 years, and the current UN sanctions regime must take that into account. The UN and the international community need policy instruments that aim to benefit the people of Afghanistan and nudge policy in the right direction, rather than only wielding tools of punishment that are yielding diminishing returns. The international community must engage with all stakeholders across all formats. I thank you, Madam President.